Hello, comic book fans. Did you know that for every mainstream universe, there are usually untold alternate realities from which to draw different versions of characters? Take our friend, the Last Angry Geek. This is how he appears in the normal universe. Sad, eh? But what if we looked at him in a myriad of alternate universes? Earth 2. In DC Comics' Earth 2 universe, the Justice Society arose instead of the Justice League. And heroes like Supergirl never came to be. Instead, they got Power Girl. Here's the Earth 2 geek. Age of Apocalypse. In Marvel's Age of Apocalypse, mutants rose to power, enslaving the human race. Only mutants are well-fed and healthy in this timeline. Bet you didn't know he was born with 6 toes on his left foot. Vertigo. In Vertigo, just about anything goes. Shocking acts of nudity and violence are common. Fuck. So is swearing. Star Trek. I'll bet you didn't know alternate realities are used in television, too. Here's a look at the Last Angry Geek from Star Trek's Mirror Universe. Notice the beard. That means he's evil. Fringe. In the cult hit Fringe, the series spends time in a strange alternate universe, where subtle differences mark changes from our own. In this universe, my show has 10 times as many viewers as Linkara's. So your show is popular here? Finally, the Ultimate Universe reimagines Marvel Comics if it had been invented in modern times instead of the 60s. Here's the ultimate Last Angry Geek. Enjoy the show. Hi everyone and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek. Now, like me, I'm sure a lot of you are fans of Marvel's Ultimate Universe. Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and of course the Ultimates. A kick-ass look at the Avengers as a paramilitary world police. It's a look that's informing modern-day Marvel comic movies even as we speak. The book became Marvel's top seller and the flagship for the Ultimate Universe. Then Jeff Loeb took over as writer. I'm not sure what happened. I mean, it looked good on paper. A great writer takes over a best-selling book. And Jeff Loeb is a great writer. After all, Batman The Long Halloween was number 2 on my recent top 11 standalone stories list. But ever since he came to Marvel, I have to be honest, things just haven't been working out in his favor. Ultimates 3 ended up feeling rushed and unsatisfying, as if they had to get it completed just so they could get to Ultimatum. And Ultimatum itself was just nothing more than one long bloodbath. Think of it as a Michael Bay movie in comic book form. After Ultimatum, Thor was trapped in Valhalla, Iron Man was devastated by Magneto using his armor to murder Wolverine, and Captain America became a bitter soldier trapped in a time he didn't understand. Well, at least some things have stayed the same. And so we enter the present, as on today's show we review New Ultimates. Essentially Ultimates 4, but with that new branding they've been putting in front of all the Ultimate comic books since Ultimatum. It's a 5-issue miniseries written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Frank Cho. Does this miniseries return the Ultimates to their former greatness? Well, no, not really, but I'd still like you to watch the review. It's a brand new day in the Ultimate Universe. As Hawkeye and Iron Man reminisce over all those who died in Ultimatum, they're attacked by the Defenders. The formerly powerless vigilantes arrive with a massive power upgrade, and they're gunning for the Ultimates. Just as the duo is starting to get overwhelmed, Captain America arrives along with ex-Defender Valkyrie and Zarda of the Squadron Supreme. This, of course, is Zarda, aka Power Princess from Supreme Power, a reimagining of the Squadron Supreme that crossed over with the Ultimate Universe in the abysmal Ultimate Power miniseries. Let me show you something. This is how she looked in that book. This is how she looks now. That's a hell of a job they're doing on continuity, don't you think? Unless, of course, she popped a whole lot of roids since coming over to this universe. The fight turns in the favor of the Ultimates, but Valkyrie hurls the missing Thor's hammer at Hellstorm, who wisps it and the defenders away. Meanwhile, in the Norse afterlife of Valhalla, Thor remains trapped after exchanging his life to resurrect Valkyrie and Captain America during Ultimatum. Thor demands that Hela return him to life and reunite him with Valkyrie. Hela does promise to free Thor if he does her one favor. She's tired of ruling alone and wants an heir. So to get back his girlfriend, Thor has to knock boots with Death. You know, in this book, Hela kind of reminds me of Lady Death. You remember her from Chaos Comics in the late 90s, right? The embodiment of Death walking around with a porn star body and leather lingerie. Oh, man. I could definitely get behind a Death who looks that hot. Not like you. Back on Earth, Tony Stark gets into a fight with Carol Danvers, the new head of S.H.I.E.L.D., over why he didn't know the Defenders had powers. Danvers crosses a line when she calls the Ultimates freaks, and Tony flips her a certain gesture before storming out. As this is going on, we cut to the Black Panther playing peekaboo with Kazar and Shauna's pet saber-toothed tigers as the trio walk through Central Park. Did Ghostbusters teach them nothing? You don't take cat monsters into Central Park! I know I'm cutting in a lot. There's just so much to make fun of. All of a sudden, the Rainbow Bridge connecting Earth and Asgard opens and an army of trolls pours out, led by none other than Loki and Amora the Enchantress. As this is going on, we learn that there's a bit of love in the old love-hate relationship between Tony and Carol. As the trolls pour in, Captain America confronts Barbara Morris, aka Valkyrie, threatening to throw her off the team if she's in league with the Defenders. He accuses her of lying about how she got her powers. She told the Ultimates that the late Hank Pym gave the Defenders a super soldier serum. Valkyrie throws a punch and gets kicked in the gut by Captain America. Valkyrie then escapes their headquarters by jumping from a window. Zarda taunts the captain about losing his suspect and he blows her off. She then encounters the Enchantress, who questions why Zarda shows an Earth that isn't her own such loyalty. Meanwhile, Kazar and Shauna try to slay dragons as the trolls march on New York. Hawkeye tries to tell Tony what's happening, but walks in on him and Carol. A now embarrassed Danvers then runs into the Enchantress, who stops her from calling security. Finally, the Enchantress comes to Valkyrie, who recognizes Amora. She tells the young woman that Thor never truly loved her. Valkyrie is shown an image of Thor making love to Hela. The Enchantress grants a large sword to Barbara and orders her to live up to her end of a mysterious bargain. Look at the size of that sword! Who knew the Norse gods bought wholesale from Square Enix? As the Ultimates battle the trolls and dragons, Loki slips into something a little more comfortable and confesses he's counting on Thor's return to Earth. Just as Iron Man questions where the Lady Ultimates are, Zarda arrives and proceeds to demolish his armor. Valkyrie attacks Captain America, doing the unthinkable in the process. And finally, Carol attacks Hawkeye, firing on him point blank. Girl power. We then flash back to Valkyrie's life, a life filled with lies and mediocrity. After the Defenders fell apart in Volume 2, she was approached by Loki, offering her and her teammates power. Her actions lead to her falling in love with Thor, joining the Ultimates, and finally to their defeat at the hands of the Troll Army. It's then revealed that Danvers shot Hawkeye with blanks, and with the Black Panther and the Jungle Couple's help, she frees the captive Ultimates. All of them are then extracted by a team of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s giant men. We cut down to Valhalla and find Thor demanding his release for services rendered. But Hela reminds him that Odin's rules state that the only way for him to return to life is for another to take his place. Angry at being used, Thor goes to strike her down and... yeah! I retract my earlier statement about finding her attractive. Oh, not that pregnant women aren't beautiful. I could just do without the pregnant dominatrix look. Naturally, Thor's a little confused as to how Hela can be this far along after only one day has passed, and she reminds him that time flows faster in this dimension. Meanwhile, technicians work on fixing Iron Man's armor while Carol explains that special contacts in her eyes kept her from being hypnotized by the Enchantress, as Valkyrie and Zarda were. The Ultimates rearm and head back to face Loki's army. The heroes parachute in, firing rifles at the trolls, and even drop a tank on Zarda. Hawkeye pulls off a shot that apparently requires him to hang upside down from a moving helicopter, nailing the Enchantress in the chest. This frees Zarda and Valkyrie from her control, and Barbara goes to kill Loki, who now has Thor's hammer. Not surprisingly, Loki skewers the girl, and as she dies in Captain America's arms, tells him he's coming. And freed by Barbara's death in his name, Thor returns to Earth. Enraged with grief, Thor attacks Captain America for not backing away from Valkyrie's body quickly enough, and then flies off to find and murder Loki. We see that Loki has shrunk himself and Amora down, so they are small enough to hide in a matchbook. He de-arrows her, but the Enchantress knows enough to be afraid of a thunder god with a broken heart and flees the battle. As Thor cuts a swath through the trolls, Zarda awakens. Enraged at being tricked by the Enchantress, she's fooled by Loki's illusions into thinking Thor is her quarry. The fight lasts only a moment, and Iron Man has to shoot a battle axe out of Thor's hand before he kills her. They fly into the sky, but the God of Thunder calls down a lightning bolt to fry Iron Man's armor. Valkyrie awakes in Valhalla and is met by a now not pregnant Hela. Hela doesn't like that Loki has been playing games with her subjects, and decides the best way to stop him is to transform Barbara into a literal Valkyrie. A giant Loki knocks Thor out of the sky. Thor literally beats him down to size, but then Loki appears to the other Ultimates. He warns them that the peaceful hippie Thor of days gone by is no more. Odin sent Thor to Earth to temper his bloodlust, but after untold centuries in Valhalla's altered time stream, Thor is back to being a mad god out for vengeance. Thor calls a tornado on New York, and Iron Man, realizing that an out-of-control thunder god might be a problem, heads back to the Triskelion, the headquarters of the Ultimates. Cap and Hawkeye open fire on Thor, but it does no good. Carol wakes up Zarda, still pissed about nobody taking her seriously, and she flies up to take on Thor. Zarda holds her own until a 2-story tall Iron Man flies out of the Ultimate headquarters and whoops Thor upside his head. Tony's broken out his Hulkbuster armor that was designed to be powered by Thor's own lightning. But the momentary advantage disappears and Thor rips open the armor. Tony asks Thor if this rage is what Valkyrie would have wanted. Thor pauses at this thought, just as Loki is about to crush him with his own hammer, only for a spear to impale Loki. Thor turns and finds Valkyrie has saved his life. One kiss, though, and Thor realizes he's lost his love to Hela. She takes Loki's body away, but not before asking Thor to love mankind as he once loved her. After the battle has ended, Kazar and Shauna pack up the Tigers and, along with the Black Panther, head to Hollywood, leaving the team. Zarda also leaves, returning to her home dimension. Finally, Thor presents Captain America with a new shield, forged by the dwarves of Asgard. Meanwhile, in Valhalla, a young boy plays at being a warrior. He meets Loki, and under Hela's watch, uncle and nephew walk off together. The series ends where it began, with Hawkeye and Iron Man on the roof of the Triskelion. They decide it's time they shoot at someone who deserves it. We cut to the Defenders, still losers in their way as they have nothing to do with their new powers but play cards and wine. An arrow in the ace lets them know that the Ultimates have arrived. So that's New Ultimates. Rereading it for this review, I'd have to admit that it's a much better story than I remembered it being. That having been said, there were some big problems with this book. Let's take a look at what did and didn't work. As with Ultimates 3, it felt like this story was kept short. While the last Ultimates series felt cut short and brought to a premature conclusion, at least New Ultimates feels like a complete story. That having been said, it feels like the entire purpose of this story was to get the team down to a more manageable size for their part in Mark Millar's Ultimates vs. Avengers miniseries. That probably could have been delayed, but then consider that miniseries is tying into Bendis' Death of Spider-Man, and you've got another Ultimate scheduling nightmare. And the problem was that the characters the story eliminated were the very ones it introduced. Only Valkyrie and Zarda really played a part in the story, if you call Zarda constantly crossing her arms apart. I mean, who does she think she is, Jeremy London in Mallrats? Yes, what a shock. The comic book guy likes Jay and Silent Bob movies. As for Kazar, Shauna, and the Black Panther, what the hell was the point of these characters? Aside from the rescue, they didn't do anything. I think they were just vanity characters put in there because Cho and Loeb like them, but they were just pointless. Now what about the good elements? Like I said, it's a much better story this time around. I think the biggest problem Jeff Loeb has is that he's Jeff Loeb. After all his brilliant work on Batman, we keep expecting brilliance from him on his other titles. And when he produces work that is merely good instead of great, the comic book community turns on him. This was a good book, but we expect great from Jeff Loeb and the Ultimates. The best thing is Loki. This is the god of chaos as he should be written. A schemer whose plans have wheels within wheels. And that last shot of him with his death Thor nephew, you can't help but wonder if the two of them being together at the end wasn't what Loki was after the whole time. This book is penciled by Frank Cho, and his art is beautiful. Aside from my aforementioned pose fatigue, I didn't really have any problems with the art. Cho has a real talent for drawing beautiful women, rugged men, and horrible monsters. And while I don't approve of any cover that doesn't fully protect the inside book, Cho's gatefold cover for issue 1 is the most ambitious cover since Jim Lee's X-Men #1. So, New Ultimates. An improvement over the last series, but still not up to the high standards set by Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. I give New Ultimates 2.5 out of 5 stars. So what about the Ultimate Universe itself? Well, it's right back to where it was before Ultimatum, producing some really good stories and some really bad ones. So I guess not too much has changed. But in my heart, I know that both the Ultimate Universe and Jeff Loeb are capable of producing a really great comic book. But when? When? Death? See you next time on Comic Book Issues.